Hey everyone, welcome back to the video series of Amazon Data Analytics Specialty. Hope you guys are doing well and staying safe. In today's video, we'll be talking about the access control mechanism of Amazon S3. So without further ado, let's start. Here's the list of topics we will be covering today. So we'll start with the S3 security overview. There are like different ways to set up access control on S3. Then we will talk about like the policies related to IAM and bucket, which one to use, elements related to policy, how policies get evaluated, and finally like a demo to demonstrate all these things. As we are aware that access control is a part of S3, so before like starting the access control discussion, I just want to take a look of overview of S3 security. So are there many great S3 features and integrated services which maintain the security of S3 bucket. In this lecture, as I mentioned, we will be covering only like bucket policy, access control list, and identity access management related to S3. But the other services or the rest of the features will be covered in the upcoming videos. And as we can see, S3 have a lot of features like bucket policy, bucket access control, replication encryption, versioning, access analyzer for S3, multi-factor authentication, delete, object locking. These are like bunch of features which are already available in S3, and they provide like they maintain the like security of S3. And there are other integrated services which work with S3, and like it can be used with other services too. So identity access management is one of those services which is used to create like IAM policies. Then we have key management services, Amazon CloudWatch alarms, AWS CloudTrail logs, VPC endpoints, service control policies. In this lecture, we won't be covering all, but just to give you an overview, like how many features and integrated services are available to maintain the security of S3. Okay, so we'll start what are the ways to set up access control on S3. Amazon provide various ways to set up access control for objects in a bucket. So there are basically three ways we will be covering this. The first one is IAM policy, bucket policy, and ACL. So bucket policy, these are JSON-based documents that allow you to specify the permissions that control access to the buckets and its object. And IAM policies, we can use IAM policies to grant or restrict access to specific users, group, or roles. And the third one is the access ACL, that stands for access control list. It's a predated bucket policy. It is basically an old way to give access, which we all have seen in our like if you're coming from Windows, you must have seen this. Like if you right click on your file and folder, there is always an ACLs like read write permissions. So it's an old way to give permissions, and it is not recommended by Amazon or by AWS. To whenever you want to set up an access control, the recommendeds are either use bucket policies or IAM policies for S3. Okay, let's look into the IAM policies. For those who are not aware what is IAM basically it's an AWS service that's help us to securely control access to AWS resources. It allows us to create, manage like users, groups. A group can have users in it and roles, and also provide access control for these AWS resources. And if we talk specifically about IAM policies are identity-based policies for S3 that can be attached to a user, group, or role. User can be a standalone users. You can have multiple users. A group is basically users can be part of a group, and roles are these are designed for more resource-based access. So for example, we can have a role which allow us to read from S3, and various resources can be attached to it. So for example, EC2 instance can be attached to it, or some other instance like other S3 buckets can be attached to it. And in layman terms, we can basically say that IAM policies are like set of rules that define who has access to what resource and what actions are allowed to perform. Okay, and it is defined in JSON format. Whenever we're defining the rules, it's in the JSON format. And as you can see on the picture, as you can see on the screen, there is a picture where it's it shows the one of the IAM policies, and as I sorry yeah and IAM policies, as I mentioned, can be attached to a user, group, or roles, and they are written in JSON using the access policy language. And like, don't be afraid, like when you hear JSON, like, oh, do we have to learn something? No, JSON is basically like a key value kind of file, and it is like basically a data type kind of file where you whenever you works in data field, you must have seen or encounters along with this. And it could be intimidating because, like, if file size grows, like, it could be confusing. But here's one thing which we'll see in the demo. Like, they provides like a generator which generates these JSON files automatically, for like they call it policy generators. And if you look at the elements are basically the key, like, for example, version statements. So there are like various elements of IAM policies, which we will see in like next, like after next couple of slides. But keep in mind that principal element is not required. This is very important from exam point of view, that principal element is not required in the IAM policy. And we'll define like what is principal. So don't worry what is like about these elements. We will define all of them one by one. Next is the bucket policies. So bucket policies are different than IAM policies. These are resource based. So if you remember, the previous IAM was identity based. These are resource based policies, and these are attached directly to S3 buckets. And bucket policies apply to all objects within the buckets, and it can be allowed to use can be used to allow or deny access to bucket as a whole or specific objects of the bucket. Similar to the IAM policy, this is defined in JSON, as we can see in the picture. And one thing you might observe in or which I mentioned to, in IAM policy, we don't have principal. Here we have a principal. In the upcoming video, we'll look into what exactly is principal. Okay, also there is another question coming to mind. It's like why we have, as we have like different ways. So a lot of time people will be like, okay, which policy mechanism they should use in what kind of scenarios. So basically, if this is like a very, I'll say it depends on your organization, it depends on a lot of things, like how things are set up there. But this is, I'm giving you some general situations where you can pick either bucket policies or IAM policies. So use IAM policies when you want to, like when you need to control access of other AWS service than S3 too. So like if it's not just bucket policy, you need to manage other things too. So in that case, IAM policy, and IAM policy is the recommended because it's a service which is designed for that purpose. And the other thing, like if you're if you prefer to keep your access control within IAM environment, so just think about this, like in your organization, everything is from access point of view is in IAM services. So in that scenario, also use IAM services. S3 bucket policies, when you want a simple way to grant access to S3 within IAM without using IAM. So basically, you just want to control it through S3. The other thing where like I think this is a genuine case where like IAM policies are reaching this size limit. So basically, IAM policies, it's a JSON, like we know it's a JSON it's a JSON document, and it has a limit. So IAM policies can be of only 4 KB. So I've seen this in my organization too. Sometimes like we have so many policies, like we hit the limit. So in those situations, if you have to create a new, let's say if you have to give permission to a user to a bucket, in that situations we can use bucket policies because that support like a larger size compared to IAM policy JSON document. And also like it's not necessarily like you have to pick IAM policy for some use cases and S3 for, you can use them together too, depending on like how you want to use them. Okay, so here are the various policy elements that define the permissions of AWS resources. So if you look at like on the left side, we have S3, and on the right side, we have IAM policies. And from the I'll say like the first glance, like everything seems different except like a couple of things. So the first thing, the difference, you might be seeing this ID, which is an optional for S3 bucket, but it is not available in IAM policies. And the second is the, which we already mentioned, the principal. In S3 buckets, you need a principal, but in IAM policy, there is no principal. And I'll explain why it's not there. And the third difference is like the resource in S3 bucket is optional, but here we have to, like it's a mandatory field in IAM policies. So if we start with version basically it tells the which version of policy language is being used. So we always use the latest one. This is the latest one. ID, which is not part of IAM policy. Here is an identifier for the policy statement, which is pretty straightforward. And then comes the statement. Statement is basically an array of policy statements where you can add multiple statements in a policy. You can have multiple statements like allowing, for example, okay, we'll see. I'll show you that. SID is basically an identifier for the like an individual statement. I said, we can have multiple statements. So if we have like 3 statements, so we will have 3 different SIDs there. That's so till here, like all the elements and definitions align. Then effect, like whether you want to allow or deny, like basically what kind of permission you want to grant, whether you want to allow or deny act. Then okay, in S3 buckets we have principal. So principal is basically who can access. And if we think from S3 bucket perspective, S3 is a resource. So who can access? Like it could be a user, it could be another service, for example EC2, or it could be like those kind of things. But in case of IAM policies, why we don't need it? Because IAM policies are attached either to a user, group, or role. So in that case, they become the principal, so you don't have to define it. The next bucket policy element is, element is the actions. What kind of actions you want to take it on your, so for example, I'll give you, let's say if we talk about S3, whether you want to allow them just like get object basically, or read or list buckets, or those kind of things. So it could be a list bucket, it could be get object, put objects. So what kind of actions you want to allow? So for demo, we could have all of them, but like in generally you have to limit users. So for example, if it's a user who just like, we can give them read access. So in that case, they will have only get object or list bucket, these kind of things. But if you want users or like resource to upload the file or update the file, in that case we need to give put object. So depending on like what you need to provide that kind of like action. Resource for S3 bucket is optional because like bucket policy is attached to S3, so we don't have to define it. If you don't define it, like it is applicable to the whole bucket, not specific to any object. So all the objects within the S3 bucket will have that policy. In case of IAM policy, we need to define that resource because it is attached to, for example, users, and also we need to define like this policy is for what. So like for example, it could be Amazon S3. I know I keep saying S3 as an example, but it could be DynamoDB, it could be Redshift, and those kind of. And last one is the condition. So conditions is an optional in both cases. It basically like you want to put a condition, whether like what time of the day or which IP addresses you want to allow or don't allow, those kind of things, you can put it here. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is the policy evaluation. And the reason being is, like, as we know, like there are various ways to apply these policies. And if we're working in a small project, it's not a problem, but in big organizations, it could be a problem. The reason, for example, a user could be part of 2 groups. One group have access, the other group don't have access. So in that situation, what AWS do, like how it evaluates, and we're also going to see that in one of our demos. So you can this is a flow chart like which it's a very simple one which explain how AWS evaluates its policy. So it start basically its decision with a default deny. Okay, we don't want to give. So if it is try to evaluate all the policies, as I gave an example, a user could be part of two groups. One group have access, other group don't have, or like one group have allowed, another group is denied. So in that case, like it will evaluate both of them and see is there any explicit deny. If it is there is an explicit deny, so I said like two groups, one group have allow, another is deny. So in that case, we have an explicit deny in one group. So the final decision will be a denial. If it is not explicit, then it will check for explicit allow. If it is there, then yes. If it is not, then as I say, the final decision will be denied because it start with a default deny. So it is important to note that deny statement in S3 bucket policies take precedence over allow statement, and allow take precedence over default deny policy. So in simple words, we can say explicit allow beats implicit deny, and explicit deny beats explicit allow. Yeah, that's pretty much like a straightforward. So the situation I was explaining, in that case, it will be a denial. Okay, so the next thing we will look into the demo, and in demo we will be looking basically in IAM policy and bucket list. ACL we won't be looking. The reason being, as I said, like it's a predated, like it is something which is not recommended, and so I don't want to I don't want you. I just want you to be aware about it, but don't want to. And it's easy too. I don't want to like complicate you guys. Okay, so let's go to IAM console. Okay, S3. Okay, so just one thing I want to tell you, like here, if you see in this account ID, I logged in with this username, and we have one bucket, data tech demo 222, and it have one file. So we'll start with the bucket policy first, like how we can create a bucket policy. Okay, so for bucket policy, you log in into your user either as a, and you need to be the bucket owner to do this. So basically log in as a root who's the owner of the bucket, like in this situation. So you click on this and you click on permissions, and after that, if you scroll down, you will find bucket policy as a, so I already have a bucket policy, but if you don't have any bucket policy, you won't see anything. You just need to click on edit. And after that, as I said, like it could be intimidating, like seeing all these, we know the definitions of all these elements, but like typing all this could be like a cumbersome task. So for that, AWS have a policy generator, basically. So I already opened it, but if you click on this, it will open a policy generator. Let me close this one. And this help us to create this JSON document. So for example, in our S3, we select S3 bucket policy. This is our policy. Then the effect, whether we want to allow or deny. Let's say we want to allow principal. So if it is your user, you can copy, like you can give star, that means like everybody, for example, like if star means everybody, or let's say if you want to give it to a specific users, go here, click on this, like go to your IAM, just for example, and let's say I have two users, user one, user two, and let's say I just want to give permission to user two. So I'll click on user two, I get this ARN, copy this, paste it in your principal, and after that, because it's S3, by default, so we don't have to select this. Actions, so here you can see list of things we can do. You can give all actions which allow them to do like a lot of things in bucket, like to create bucket, delete bucket. That's generally not recommended in an organization setup, but for demo we can do that. And this is what I'm saying, like you can create, look, there are like various actions, like create bucket, get objects, depending on like your use case. You can have put object, these kind of, like whatever you want, you can do that. Let's do, to keep it simple, we can click all actions and ANR, because we creating this for S3, so we need an S3 ANR. We go here, let's go to S3 again. I click on this, and if you click on permissions, there are different ways to get it, but I'll copy it from here. One second. When you click on edit, you will get the ANR. So you copy this, paste it here, and add statement. If you want to add conditional, we can do that. In this demo we won't. Just click on add statement, then there will be a policy, like a statement will be added, and you need to click on generate policy, and this will create a JSON policy JSON document for you. So as I said, like typing this by your own could be intimidating, like could be I won't say challenging, but like it could be a task which is not necessarily, like not necessary in sense, like if you have a JSON document, copy paste, instead of that, like use this generator and get this. So here you can, like if we if we zoom into this just to explain you, I already have similar kind of thing, but just to explain you. So we have a ID which defines as an identifier for this policy. Then we have version, and this is the latest version. This is a version of policy, access language. The statement, I said the statement is an array. So here you can see this, like here to here, this is an array. If you click on this, like it's an array, and in this array we can have multiple statements. So let's say if we want to add one more, we can do that, and that will start from here. I'll show that in my existing policy. SID is the statement identifier action, what action. So here we are allowing everything. In fact, it could be allow or deny. This is the resource. This is the principal, which we got it from there. So let me zoom out. And after that, like just copy paste this. Oops, sorry, like copy this, Control C, close, go to your bucket. So I already have a like a policy there, but let me, one second, cancel, sorry. Let me zoom in to show you what exactly our policy is mean here. So basically, like this makes sense. Version, then this is the SID, like this is the name, allow, and this is the principal. So we giving user to read and list permission, and we allowing them on these users. Okay, so pretty like similar with what we have, but it's just instead of like all resources, we giving them just get and list. And if you click on this, one more thing, let's click on new statement, it will be added as a new statement in this array of statements. So if you click on this, so you see I was saying this is an array which start from here till here, and the new statement will be added here. So I'm going to cancel it. Okay, so basically what we did, like we give our user to list and read permission in our demo. Sorry, in our data tech demo bucket. Okay, we can go, and this here I'm logged in as a user 1. Let me go, let me check if I'm logged in somewhere, user 2. Okay, so if we click on this, refresh, we should be able to see the bucket here. See, so once the bucket policy is added, you can see the bucket, and I guess we applied it. Yeah, so here it is. The next thing I want to talk about is the IAM policy and also how the evaluation work. Okay, so let's do one thing. I just want to do one thing. Let's go one second, sorry. Go here, click on IAM user. So here I created two groups. One is allow user, second one is the deny user. This is just to show you how the policy valuation work and also the IAM policy. So if I click on, let's go to user one, because I added user one as in group one. So if I click on user one, okay, it is part of read access S3. Okay, and this policy is customer aligned to this group. So basically what that means, if we go to this group, allow user, click on permission. So you see read access policy here. So this is an IAM policy, and which if you click on this, it will give you that same JSON. Like it's a visual editor, like it's the same, like we have a visual editor to generate this, and there is a JSON too, which give you the idea of like what is the permission. So this is like I have already, but I'll show you how we can create an IAM policy. So we go to a group. So in this case, like we are creating a IAM policy, attaching it to the group and adding user to that group. So in that way, like user will have permission. So I'll like here now I'll show how to create a policy. Just click on create inline policy. So after that, select a service. So we select S3. It's very straightforward. And the actions, like you can do whatever you want, like you can select all of them, or you can do list and read. So that will give them permission of like 64, or sorry, 63 permissions, sorry, 63 types of actions. In resource, just to keep it simple, let's do it all. And we don't touch this. We click on review policy. So that's how you create an IAM policy. And let's give it a name, read access to, yeah, just give it a name, read access to policy, create. So here we have like two permissions. So this one is the old one, and they both are IAM policies. And if you click on this, the JSON document, what it says, if we try to understand this, I may maximize this. So basically this is, if you look at like majorly affect and the action, so it's basically allowed to get and list all the objects from here. Yeah, and on all the resources. It's not the best way, like it's not the best policy, but this is just for the demo purposes. So, and if we go in users, user one is only part of allow users, and in allow user we have a policy which allow to see the S3 elements. So let's go, let me check. Oh, so here you can see this is a user one. We logged in here as a user one. And if you can see the bucket is already there. So if I refresh this, because it's a read policy, nothing will change. It will, we are able to read it. Now let's do one thing just to show you. We will create another, we will create another policy in deny users. And this policy is, instead of allow, it will be a denial. So what we'll do, we can do one thing very quickly. Let's go to user group, click on allow, click on permissions, and let's say we copied this. Let's go to JSON. So copy the whole JSON, Control C, and we will use exact same. The only thing we will changing in the line number 6 is instead of allow, we will make it deny, and we will add user to that denial user group too. So if we go here, okay, sorry, this, if we go to user group, denial S3, and permissions. So I explicit deny already have a service, but like I'll create a new one just to show you. And JSON, and we already copy pasted like our allowed one. We click here and we make it deny. So this one is an explicit denial, and as I mentioned, like explicit denials are they take the highest preference. So they beats explicit allow, and explicit allow beats implicit denials. So we click on this, we name as this explicit deny 2 just a name, create policy, and we will also check like the existing policy. So it have already an existing policy just to be sure. Here what it says, JSON, yes, it's a denial too. So currently the user one, or we don't have any user here. If we add user one into this group, add user, okay, let's go to users and look at the user one group. So user one is a part of allow user and deny user. It's part of both groups, and allow users have a policy which allow the user to read to read and list the buckets. However, deny S3 users group have a denial policy that does not allow, and according like how the policies are evaluated, now user one should not have access to the policy. So now you see this, if we refresh this, it should be no buckets. See, no buckets. So that shows our, if we go this, how this our evaluation work. Sorry. Yeah. So here you can see explicit deny takes preference over, like it beats the explicit allow, and explicit allow beats final design. So in this case, explicit denial beats the explicit allow. Okay, so that's all for this video. If you have any questions, please put it in the comments, and stay tuned for the upcoming videos. Have a good one.